see that word? Nineveh. Mosul in northern Iraq is Nineveh that I just read about in the story of Jonah. Iraq is modern day Assyria. So evil doings in Nineveh or Mosul and Iraq are nothing new. This goes back centuries. That's where the main part of this story, or a large part of this story, takes place. That tower that you just saw blown up, that is the monument to the grave of Jonah. Islamic State blew it up back in 2014. It is one of the, or it was when it existed, one of the most important Christian shrines in the world. It's believed that at or very near that spot is where Jonah was eventually laid to rest. Very important to Christians, but it's also very important to another group of people. They put it in their book. It says, "And lo, Jonah verily was of those sent to warn, when he fled unto the laden ship, and then drew lots, and was of those rejected. And the fish swallowed him while he was blameworthy. And had he not been one of those who glorify Allah, he would have tarried in his belly till the day when they are raised. Then we cast him on a desert shore while he was sick, and we caused a tree of gourd to grow above him. And we sent him to 100,000 folk or more, and they believed. Therefore we gave them comfort for a while." That was not only one of the most important Christian monuments, it was also one of the most important monuments to the faith of Islam. And what I just read is from their holy book, the Quran. They recognized Jonah as well as a prophet from God, because eventually he did go and he brought the word of God to Nineveh. Now, I wanted to let you know that, so it helps to verify the realness of the story of Jonah. So the book of Jonah itself. Jonah is what is called one of the minor prophets of the Old Testament. His book is different than the other books of prophecy. The book of Jonah doesn't focus on the message from God that the prophet is supposed to give the people. Rather, the book of Jonah focuses on Jonah himself. It's the story of Jonah. Now, most commonly, when we think of Jonah, what do we think of? The fish, yeah. A gigantic fish that swallows a man in 3 days and 3 nights in his belly. Jonah is not a fish story. 4 chapters, 48 verses, 3 of them are about the fish, or 6% of the book only is about a giant fish. Jonah is about much more. That giant fish, that's just a tool in God's toolbox. That's just one thing he used. It's so much more than that. Is it a true story? Or is the whole thing a work of fiction? Many people claim that it's just that. It's a fictitious story. Many people claim that it's a parable. That, like the stories Jesus used to tell. It's a made-up story that he would tell in order to make a specific point. A man survives 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a fish. And it says fish. It does not say well. Hebrew had a word for well at that time, and they didn't use it. They deliberately used the word fish. It was a fish. It wasn't a warm-blooded mammal like a whale. It was a cold-blooded, gigantic fish of some sort that swallowed up Jonah. Science has attempted for centuries to explain how that's possible, how a man could survive that. They can't explain it. They've come to the determination that it's impossible. And so a lot of people say, well, it's just a story, because science cannot explain it. Well, of course they can't explain it. It's not scientific. It's not natural. It is supernatural. It's God. It's a miracle from God. It's funny, the things that we will believe regarding our faith and things that we reject as unbelievable. We believe that God created this entire universe from nothing. There was nothing, and then poof, it was all here. We believe that God came down from heaven and lived on earth as a man. We believe that God died and then he rose from the dead. And we believe that because he did that when we die, we're going to rise from the dead and we're going to live forever. We'll believe that. But then we refuse to believe that a man can live for 3 days and 3 nights inside a fish. God made the fish. God made the man. He can do anything he wants with them anytime he wants. There's nothing beyond the ability of God. If he wants to have a 20-piece orchestra play Beethoven in the stomach of a rhinoceros, who's going to stop him? God can do anything. It's a real story. It's not made up. And also the detail, the historical detail in the story itself. In parables, there's nothing specific. In a parable, it's a man or a woman. When it comes to locations, it's, well, they went to a city or a place. Jonah is identified by name. He's an historical person identified. His father is identified by name. There are historically verifiable locations and cities that are named, identified by name in Jonah. It's not a parable. And Jesus himself, 3 times in the Gospels, refers to Jonah as being a real, live, living human being as part of history. The story of Jonah is real, it's historical, it's not fiction, it's not made up. What about authorship? Let's get into the background of the book. Who wrote the book of Jonah? There's no direct claim to authorship within the scripture of it itself. And it's pretty much written in the third person. Jonah's referred to in the third person. That would lead you to believe that someone other than him wrote it. But that third person style of writing was very common among the Old Testament writers. When you look at the personal biographical information about Jonah that's in there, it's pretty much universally agreed Jonah's the only possible one that could have written it. So he is accepted as the author of the book that bears his name. When? When did it take place? What time period? 785 years before the birth of Jesus is when this story of Jonah occurs. Where did it happen? What's the setting? Well, it starts out in chapter 1 in the nation of Israel. It is after the reigns of King David and King Solomon sometime later. After King Solomon, Israel went into civil war, and the nation was divided in half. The northern part retained the name of Israel. The southern part of the original kingdom became known as Judah. This story starts in the northern part, in the nation of Israel. Jeroboam II is the king of the northern kingdom, the king of Israel. And from outward appearances, he is an incredibly successful king. Israel before him had hit hard times. Its boundaries had shrunk. It had gotten smaller. During his reign, he expanded those boundaries back to where they were under David and Solomon. Israel had its zenith. The nation got rich. It was very prosperous. People grew rich. It was a time of prolonged peace. There were no foreign invasions like it happened so many times in the years past. Jeroboam's reign was peaceful and it was prosperous. The nation grew. A lot of people within Israel became rich. And along with their increased wealth, they also became arrogant. And they viewed their prosperity, they lorded it over other people. They viewed this prosperity and peace as a sign that they had God's blessing, that God was smiling on them, that God was on their side. Now, as successful as Jeroboam was materially, he was a complete failure from a spiritual standpoint. Along with his prosperity and arrogance, the people of Israel, the nation, became morally, spiritually, and ethically bankrupt. They fell back into the old practice of worshiping man-made idols. They turned away from God. What little religion that was maintained, it became nothing more than ritual. There was no meaning or substance behind it. They looked down on the poor. They persecuted the poor. They neglected the poor. They took advantage of the poor in court. They stole their land from them. They drifted about as far away from God as there was very true worship of God that was left in the nation. Jonah was God's appointed prophet to Israel during this period of time. Now, a prophet is a person that God chooses or appoints. He's a person God speaks to. He relays God's information. God speaks to the prophet, and then the prophet preaches God's word to the people. That was Jonah. He followed Elijah and Elijah. He was the main man, spiritual man in Israel. His name means dove. He was born in Galilee in a small town. He grew up in a small town just outside Nazareth, where almost 800 years later, Nazareth, of course, was the childhood home of Jesus. He was well known, and he was well liked by pretty much everybody in Israel. He had prophesied these prosperous times and this peaceful time that would come under Jeroboam. And because of that, he was very popular. Now then, we have Nineveh. Nineveh is the capital city of the nation of Assyria. And they are an historical enemy of Israel. They've done battle before, and they will do battle again. Nineveh is really impressive. It is the largest city in the ancient world. And it is one of the mightiest and most well-known cities in all of the history of the earth. It was founded by a guy named Nimrod, who was the great-great-grandson of Noah. And you might remember Nimrod. He was the main builder of the Tower of Babel. Now, the people got together. They were going to build this tower. They were going to become like God. They were going to reach the heavens. God said, that's enough of that. And he destroyed that tower. And he confused the people by, well, that's when he brought different languages into the world. Everybody started speaking different languages. Nimrod moved on from there and went into Assyria, what is today Iraq, and built the city of Nineveh. It's estimated that the city of Nineveh and it's not like I said Nineveh, did it? Not that. The city itself and the surrounding area, what we would call a metropolitan area, it's estimated the population peaked around 600,000 people. That is incredibly large for that period of time. That's larger than Miami or St. Louis or Atlanta today. It was a huge city. The city proper itself was encircled by a wall. This wall was 100 feet tall, and its total distance around was 7.5 miles. It was so wide at the top, you could drive 3 chariots across it, side by side, at the same time. It was a massive structure. It had streets that were 20 miles long. That was unheard of for that day. 20 miles, that's further from here to Kewanee. And they had streets in Nineveh that long. It was massive, it was impressive, it was a powerful city and nation. And Assyria was expanding their territories just like Israel was. You have these two nations close together, and they're both expanding. It was inevitable that eventually they were going to come to blows again. They were going to conflict with one another, and they did. A few decades after Jonah's time, Assyria conquered Israel, and they took the people into exile, took them into captivity. Now, as mighty and impressive as Nineveh was as a city, the thing that it's most known for is its wickedness and its unparalleled cruelty. Like the Islamic State today, there was no bounds to the savagery that they would inflict on their enemies and the people they conquered. They massacred and mutilated their enemies. When they captured people, when they captured a city, they would take the small children and burn them alive in front of their parents. They skinned people alive and then took their skins and hung them on the walls for decoration. They were incredibly cruel. They dismembered people. They cut off fingers and toes and ears and noses. They just hacked off people's limbs. They gouged their eyes out. When they conquered a city, they would go in, and many of the citizens they would decapitate, and then they would take their severed heads and line them along the top of the wall around that city for enjoyment. They got a kick out of it. The ones they took into exile, they pierced their lower lips with a fish hook, with a line tied on it, and then they would drag them, pull them along back to Nineveh in that method. Take them back there, and then they would torture them and eventually kill them. And beyond all that, they were proud of their cruelty. They celebrated it. They erected monuments and statues to the people that inflicted the most suffering on human beings. They would inscribe, the greatest atrocity, they would build a statue and then inscribe on that statue a quote from the person, relishing whatever it was they had done to inflict such incredible suffering. ISIS, Islamic State today, is basically just carrying on the work of what their predecessors did all those years ago. Nineveh was without rival when it came to cruelty and total disregard for human welfare and human life. And this is the city that God comes to Jonah and says, Jonah, go to Nineveh and preach. That'd be like God sending an American pastor the day after 9/11 to go preach to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. Go and preach to these people. Bring my word to the people of Nineveh. A literal translation of what God said to Jonah was, get up and go. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a direct order from God, a direct command to his appointed prophet. Jonah's job was to obey. And there's nothing to indicate that up until this point, Jonah had ever done anything but that when he received instructions from the Lord. God would speak, Jonah would listen, and he would immediately do what God told him to do. And it appears that this time is going to be no different. If you notice in the scripture, Jonah doesn't argue. He doesn't protest. He doesn't tell God no. In fact, he doesn't say anything. There's not one word there from Jonah when God approached him. So we're not told why he did what he did next. We don't find that out until the next chapter. We'll have to wait until next week to find out why it is Jonah decided to run. But that's exactly what he did. He didn't say a word. He took off, but he took off in the opposite direction. And notice it doesn't say that he ran away from Nineveh or that he ran away from the assignment. It says Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed to Tarshish. He was running from God. He wanted to get as far away from God as he possibly could. He wanted to go someplace where God will never find him. First thing he did is he ran down to Joppa. That's a city on the western edge of the Mediterranean there in Israel. He bought a ticket. Bought a ticket for Tarshish. Go ahead and pull that next map up, huh? God had told him to go 550 miles in this direction to Nineveh. Instead, his intention was to go over 2,600 miles in the opposite direction to Tarshish. And that's that purple arrow over there. It's down at the very southern tip of Spain. He was going to put as much distance between him and God as he possibly could. If he could have gone further, I think he would have. But back in those times, that's about, that's right where the Mediterranean empties into the Atlantic. That's about as far as a person could travel back in those days. He was going as far as he possibly could. Now, once they get out to sea, a great storm strikes the ship. The scripture says it's a God storm. And it threatens not just to sink the ship, but to break it up. The crew of this ship would have been seasoned sailors. They've been through storms before. They've seen that. They've never seen a storm like this storm. This storm was different. This storm was produced, directed, and fueled by God. And the sailors didn't know what to make of it. They panicked. They threw the cargo overboard. That's their livelihood. No cargo, no pay. They were so desperate they were willing to do anything to try to escape this. They were pagans. And it says they started calling on their whatever individual god they had made up in their mind. Hard telling, probably as many gods on that, believed on that ship as there were members of the crew. They started calling on these individual, various personal versions of God. Their reasoning was, man, somebody must have made some god of some type mad, and now we're paying the price for it. So as they're going through this, they find that Jonah's down in the hold of the ship. He's asleep. Here the ship's being tossed all over the place, about to break up, and here's the guy sound asleep. I had a little trouble figuring that out, and I thought, sometimes as human beings, when we know we're in a place we shouldn't be, or we're doing something, sometimes we just retreat to bed. We pull the covers up over our head, and we escape whatever it is we don't want to confront. We don't want to personally confront. We just go to bed and try to pretend that it doesn't exist. Doesn't work for Jonah. They find him, they get him up. The sailors then cast lots to find out who's responsible for this, and it indicates Jonah. So they interrogate him. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you all about? What have you done to cause this to happen? And Jonah just opens up. He tells them everything. Tells them that he's running from God. While he's at it, he tells them about the God that he worships. I don't worship a God. I don't worship some God. I worship the God. I worship the one and only God. I worship the God that made this sea and everything around you. And the sailors are terrified. They've never encountered the God that Jonah is describing. So they say, what should we do to appease your God? To make this storm go away? Jonah, well, pick me up and throw me overboard, throw me in the sea, and the storm will go away. You'll be saved. Now he's doing what a prophet's supposed to do. He's prophesying. God's told him, if they do this, I'll do this. He's telling prophecy, telling them the truth. So they do, reluctantly, but eventually they pick him up and pitch him over the side of the ship. And I think maybe without even realizing it, even though Jonah's running from God, God's still using it because something happened to these sailors. If you look at what unfolds here. Before pitching Jonah into the sea. Now these were pagans. Not that long before, they all had their own gods, their own made-up gods. Before they threw him into the sea, they prayed. And who did they pray to? Not to some made-up God, not to some God with a small g. It was there in verse 14. The sailor said, please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, Lord, have done as you pleased. They're not praying to some made-up idol. Jonah's told them about his God. They have been confronted with the true God, and now they are praying to him as Lord. And that is a whole different thing than worshiping an idol. They call him Lord. They offer sacrifices to him as Lord. When it says they make vows to him as Lord, that means they're making promises about their future life. Part of a prophet's job is to lead people to God, to lead them to faith in God. And even in the midst of all this, God uses Jonah to lead these sailors. They have now encountered the one true living God, and they are never going to be the same. Doing his job even when he didn't realize he was doing his job. Meanwhile, it appears that Jonah's done. It appears that Jonah has messed with God and God's taken him out. He's overboard. He's out there in the middle of the Mediterranean. Have you ever wondered why it's 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish? At this point in their voyage, they would have been about 600 miles out to sea, 600 miles from shore. That type of ship, with a seasoned veteran crew, under the right conditions, could make about 200 miles a day. So they were 3 days and 3 nights away from safety and away from shore. That's how far Jonah is. No way he's going to make it. He's out there in the ocean. He's not going to make it 3 days and 3 nights. So God arranges special transportation for his man. He's going to spend the next 3 days and 3 nights enjoying the amenities of his own personal transport. Just kind of like a spinnerbait going through the water. Here comes this giant fish and go! Welcome to Fish Belly Cruise Lines. We're sorry, sir, but your cabin is an interior cabin and you will have no windows. Enjoy your trip. And that's where we're going to pick it up next week. God had sent personal transportation for Jonah. Psalm 139, 7 through 10 says this. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. We can try to run from God, but it doesn't work. Because no matter where we go, God is already there. And he's still chasing after us. We've all been there at some time in our life. There's been times that we haven't done what God wants us to do, or we've done the opposite of what he wants us to do. We're in that place anytime we engage in a continuing sin, and we know it, and we just ignore it. And what we're trying to do is run away and hide from God. But our job as Christians is to carry out God's will. And it doesn't matter if we like what God's will is or not. It doesn't matter if we agree with God's will for our life. Doesn't matter one bit. We might think we have a better idea for our life than what God's will is. So what? He's God. Our wishes, our desires, our plans, our convenience, they don't even enter the equation. The prayer says, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It does not say, your will be done in heaven and my will be done on earth. We can ignore God. We can run. We can play ostrich and stick our head in the sand and pretend He's not there. Good luck. But it won't work. Now, He won't force us to obey. He gives us free will. But He also is not going to let it go. He's going to stay after us. Denying God's will is sinful. And if we continue to run and try to hide, eventually God's going to act. Now, He's compassionate. He's forgiving. He'll give us second, third, fourth, however many chances. But there's still only one way to go about things. He's a narrow-minded God. The one way to go about things is His way and no other way. And if we comply, we will find out that is the best way and the most rewarding way. It's not our job to ask questions or to argue or to try to bargain with God. Our job is simply listen for His voice. God speaks, we hear, we obey, we carry out, and we may as well, because God, no matter what, God is always going to give the final word. He is God. He alone is God. Amen.